G'day guys and gal. As a general rule of thumb, being really good at killing people makes you pretty popular in Warhammer 40k. Sigismund, Abaddon, Commander Farsight, Margan Ra, all known and beloved legends with a kill tally higher than your sister's body count. But did you know that there are actually wildly powerful legendary Space Marine warriors that you've probably never heard of? Warriors who could match or even surpass the fan favourites, but for whatever reason just never really got the attention they deserved, and that is certainly worth talking about. Before we get started, yes, I got a haircut, and as a result of that, my Kenergy is all but gone. The blonde was fun. I learned a bit more about myself through the experience, and I have realized that I am enough without it. What do you guys think? Should I bring back the blonde around November this year, but keep it more casual and highlighty rather than just a full-on bleach, or should we just leave that chapter in the past and focus on other things, like scrotum piercings? Speaking of scrotum piercings, we are tentatively locking in the 8th of March as the launch date for the 2024 nude cosplay calendars. This year is leaps and bounds better than last year's, which was already awesome. We have an extra model, extra cosplays, higher budget cosplays, and I've teamed up with a world-renowned composite artist to do the editing for it. Basically, I've learned all the lessons of last year's and improved on everything. I wanted to go so hard on this year's calendar that one of the cosplays on it costs more than the rest combined. It's epic, but I'd do anything for the Lord of the First Legion, baby. The calendars will also be sent out super quickly as well, as they're already in the warehouse ready to ship. I've assigned a completely different team to do the calendars, so it won't mess with any of the major mini stuff like the Big E's, who I'm happy to report that we've had the highest record of dispatch this week. Not too much longer left on those. Exciting times. I wasn't joking when I said 2024 would be the biggest year for the channel ever. Today we'll check out the most powerful Space Marines you've probably never heard of. As a bit of a note, the first two are semi-popular but still quite niche, at least compared to how powerful they are. However, the final three will be dudes you almost certainly don't know about. I'll detail how powerful they were and why they never really made it into the halls of legends. Let's get into it. The first on this list is a Grey Knight, and a very dope one at that. Hyperion the Blade Breaker. Although Kaldor Drago gets all the credit for being the most overpowered Grey Knight, Hyperion is an absolute monster. Firstly, he's called the Blade Breaker because he was able to fight Angron and not only survive, but also he broke the Demon Primarch's sword and was instrumental in banishing him. During the months of shame, when the Grey Knights and Space Wolves were in all-out war, he was the only Grey Knight that the Wolves respected, and he was also the only one that would have been able to stop Logan Grimnar. However, the two never got to have their duel, but it would have been fucking awesome. The fun thing about Hyperion is that many of you already know him under a different name. He was born as Zale, a kid from a hive city who was addicted to drugs. He was then taken in and looked after by Inquisitor Gideon Raevenor, Eisenhorn's old pupil. Zale would go on a bit of an adventure with them before eventually being handed over to the Grey Knights due to his unique and powerful psychic abilities. Like, the kid was able to purge the blankness from an untouchable, making them a normal human, something very few people can do. I would say he's flown under the radar mostly because of his lack of wider lore. Beyond the months of shame and the fight with Angron, he hasn't really popped up anywhere else, with his Inquisition backstory being more of an Easter egg than anything. He also doesn't have a model, which never helps. The next on this list I'm sure every Night Lord fan has heard of, but beyond that, I'd be surprised. We have Decimus. Decimus is the son of a navigator and human, being born as a highly genetically stable boy. Due to this stability, he was given Super Gene Seed, taken from the corpse of the legendary Thos. The Super Gene Seed gave Decimus the ability to accurately see the future without any drawbacks. It would not drive him insane like it did to Conrad Curse, nor would it slowly kill him like it was doing to Thos. With this power, despite being a pretty young and unknown warlord of the Night Lords, he was able to unite the Legion under his banner with the intention of taking on Crawford Ulthwé, implying that his foresight power was equal to or even greater than the greatest minds of the Eldar. Decimus would inherit the gifts of First Claw, the skin cloak of the warrior Uzas, the winged helmet of the legendary swordsman Zal, the sword of Talos, and so on, implying that he was the culmination of all these warriors put together. It would not be a stretch to say that Decimus is currently the most powerful Night Lord alive, unless Sevatar is still kicking around somewhere. However, as he literally only appears in the epilogue of a single series and has never been mentioned again, it's not a surprise that not many people know about him. Okay, now we get to the really fucking niche Space Marines that I seriously doubt you know about. The Iron Hands are known to be tough bastards, but with how hard they've got clapped on Isfan 3, there isn't too many of them floating around. However, did you know that there was an Iron Hand who beat the shit out of Sigismund in an honor duel? During a Great Crusade campaign, Ferrus and Dawn disagreed about the course of action, so as any reasonable man would, they both sent forward their champions to honor duel. Fair enough. Dawn chose Sigismund, Ferrus chose Thos, Shield Centurion of the Feld clan. Thos was heavily augmented, with barely any of his human body remaining. He was massive, with his arms and legs bolstered by pistons to give him strength way beyond a normal Astartes. However, since he was crafted so well, his speed wasn't slowed at all. If anything, it was sped up. The two warriors fight, Thos immediately getting the upper hand. Thos hit Siggy in the shoulder, exploding his pauldron and breaking his arm. In return, Sigismund kicked Thos, but all he did was jar his own leg. Sigismund said it was like kicking a mountain. Thos then clashed his mace against Siggy's sword, the impact breaking some of Siggy's fingers. He then hit Siggy in the face, breaking his nose and cheek. Then he hit Siggy in the shin, cracking it. Then he hit him in the hand again, breaking his other hand, before finally crunching him in the gut, winding him. At this point, Siggy hadn't even give Thos a dent. But then plot armor kicks in, as it often does, and despite being broken and dazed, Sigismund randomly does one of those anime moves where the screen goes black and you just see a few cut marks, and then BAM! Thos has his piston feet cut, with Sigismund's blade hovering in between Thos's teeth, forcing him to yield. Now yes, this wasn't prime Sigismund, but the amount of anime plot armor bullshit here was nuts. Thos was so mechanically brutal and effective that Sigismund's artful and graceful swordplay was completely countered. Also, both of Siggy's hands were super broken, so how can he still be so fast and precise, especially with how fucked up he was? But regardless, almost bodying Sigismund like it was nothing is a feat only Thos has ever achieved. However, as his entire existence was confined to a single duel with Siggy and then he was never mentioned again, it's no surprise that no one really knows about him. The next Astartes is a pretty cool one, as it is the Thousand Sons Blademaster, the greatest Thousand Son swordsman in their entire legion, who combines his mastery of sorcery with the art of the blade. His name was Sonak. Sonak was such a powerful warrior that none of the Thousand Sons were ever able to foresee his defeat or death. Sonak would survive the Great Crusade as a melee champion, as well as the fall of Prospero, taking out many space wolves and even custodes. His psychic abilities allowed him to be faster and stronger than a normal space marine, as well as one of his swords being psychic in nature. The fact that a melee specialist was one of the few survivors against an army of space wolves is pretty nuts. He would go on to be a loyal servant of Ahriman on the planet of sorcerers, however was eventually confronted by Lucius, who was going around the galaxy trying to duel the best there was in order to improve. As the two warriors dueled, Lucius was on the back foot and was surprised with how powerful the Thousand Son was. He also wasn't familiar with the fighting style, a mix of dual swords infused with psychic power. However, Lucius then went Super Saiyan mode during the fight and was able to get the upper hand and win. However, Ahriman intervened to stop Lucius from killing Sonak as he needed him. Sonak would serve Ahriman for thousands of years, however turned against him when he found out that Ahriman wanted to do another rubric, knowing how badly the first one went. Sonak used blanks to take away Ahriman's psychic ability and he proceeded to body the shit out of him with his superior swordsmanship. However, Ahriman was able to escape, using his power to overwrite Sonak's brain before infusing him with a shard of Magnus. So I guess Sonak remains alive, but in a bit of a changed state. The reason no one really knows much about him is because the Ahriman books are pretty niche, and the duel between him and Lucius, where I first heard about him, also requires some solid reading to come across, something that not a whole lot of you guys and gals do, which is fine as my job kind of relies on me knowing more than you. And finally, we have a warrior who transcends all others on this list, a warrior who was above Sigismund and was seen as the most obscenely skilled fighter and duelist out of all the legions. I give you Tesarius Akuduana of the 3rd Legion. This man was multiple leagues above the rest. He was the first of the Palatine Blades, the elite swordsman of the Emperor's children, and would go around dueling and beating everyone. I'm talking named characters and champions, not just run-of-the-mill space marines. He was like Lucius, but way less of a prick and way better at fighting. It got to a point where Akuduana was so bored of fighting other space marines due to how weak they were compared to him that he ended up dueling Ferrus Manus himself. So that is how an Emperor's Children's swordsman ended up in a Primarch dueling cage with the Primarch of the 10th Legion. Ferrus charges, but is unable to hit Aku, who is blindingly fast. Aku dodges and weaves between the attacks, striking at Ferrus's weak points. Aku even begins to laugh mid-duel and is excited that he might actually have to try for once. Eventually, he sees an opening and stabs his blade at Ferrus's cock, the cheeky bastard, but it gets stuck in Ferrus's armor, giving Ferrus an opening to break Aku's arm and then falcon punch him across the cage, ending the fight. Aku sits there, laughing and choking on his own blood, finding the sensation of finally being beaten for the first time in his life invigorating. So why isn't this god tier warrior up there with the likes of Sigismund? Well, at the end of the book that he is featured in, Aku sacrifices himself in order to save the Imperial forces, including Ferrus Manus. His death, combined with the fact that he was only present for one book, means that unless you've read it, you really wouldn't know who he is, especially since he doesn't really get referenced after that. It's unclear if he would have stayed loyal or not at the Horus Heresy. As much as as I would have liked to see him shoulder to shoulder with Saul Tarvitz, it seems more likely that he would have gone trader, as he was obsessed with fighting and perfecting. Very much a more likable Lucius type of guy. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where you can get a taste of what the cosplay calendar will entail. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more unknown but epic content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.